Within the next year, I ran into John everywhere I went. He'd begun to make it known to everyone around us that his relationship was all but over, and I could see the way he looked at me. But during this time, I was diagnosed with borderline cervical cancer, which really took me by surprise. My mom took me, helped me through the many procedures I had to have within 6 months. I was told that it would be hard for me to have children, but that it could be done. I didn't worry so much because I didn't want children. I had my nieces and nephews, and they were all I needed when it came to children. The doctors were able to remove all of my cancer cells, and after much pain and recovery, I began to feel better. God had healed me. He had done what I begged him to do for months, and my family prayed hard and asked him to have mercy on me and my body. I was fearful for quite a while, but I realized he had answered my prayers. This was the first time that I felt he had answered me. After time went on and my next procedure was scheduled, the doctors informed me that there was a huge chance that I would never be able to carry a child without extreme measures. It seemed that after so many procedures, my cervix had become more fragile than a piece of paper. This wasn't something that was expected from the beginning, and my body wasn't prepared for so many procedures in such a short amount of time. My cervix had suffered. The doctors informed us that without a cervical stitch or cerclage, I could never carry a child to term. After a few days of processing the facts, I decided that it was okay. I was never going to have children, and if by chance I ever did, I'd be older with a husband that took care of me and would be able to go to these extreme measures to have a child. I realized that if the time ever came, I would be able to have at least one child. Measuring the good and the bad, it seemed okay. Besides, cancer could have taken me, but that wasn't God's plan. I was happy. He had healed me and took the burden of my fears away. I was headed in the right direction with my life because he proved to me that he was here, holding me when I needed him the most. My fears began to dissolve and my faith began to return. I was simply ready to get the final surgery done and over with so that I could continue on with my search for God. Within the week, my mom took me for my last procedure to finish removing the cancer cells from my cervix. By now, I couldn't count all the procedures I had had. As we sat there in the waiting room together, we talked about the possibility of me having children in the future. She was sweet and kind, everything a mother should be. She gave me hope and even made me smile, as all I could think of was the pain that was to come. I knew God was with me and going to guide me and give me the strength through my mom. As with all the other procedures, they called my name and my mom and I stood up slowly and then walked back to the room. With each step, I felt my nerves begin to creep up through my body and almost paralyzed me. In each step that I felt like I was being forced to take. The surgeon stood at the door and waited patiently for me to catch up. They had my gown and all the utensils they were going to use sitting where I could clearly see them. I began to shake and soon realized I was having an anxiety attack. My chest was heavy, my throat felt as if it was closing, and my entire body was shaking and weak. I'd always had anxiety, but not this severe. My mom took me lightly by the hand and guided me to the table. She then held my face and kissed my cheek and told me that everything was going to be okay. I had always wanted to hear those words throughout my life, but I so rarely heard them. But on this day, in this moment, my mom let me hear those words, and I soon felt myself calming. The doctor said with these treatments, if all went well, that I would be cancer-free and I could return to a normal life after 3 weeks of healing. Taking a deep breath and agreeing while I prayed quietly in my head, I laid down and submitted to the procedure. My mom stood behind me and held my head with both of her hands, pressing her face against mine and holding my hand all at the same time. She almost cried when she saw the tears streaming down my face, and she could see on the ultrasound screen what they were doing to me. I only screamed a couple times, but my mom kept me calm. I felt as if I was about to die, and I could not understand why they didn't put me to sleep. Of course, they informed me why, but this kind of pain, why don't they sedate women? As soon as the procedure was finished, Mom took me home and put me to bed. She watched over me for 2 weeks before I felt better. She brought me food and helped me to the shower. She watched over me hand and foot for 2 weeks when I was finally feeling as if I could move without feeling as if I was going to die. I called a few friends of mine, and my mom reminded me of how careful I had to be as I walked out the door. I explained that I understood and closed the door, and it hit me that my mom had taken wonderful care of me through all of this. So I turned back and opened the door and said, "I love you, Mom."